Hi ladies, it is the last week of Nerdfighter Book Club, and this week we are talking about the last part of The Fault in Our Stars. When I first read The Fault in Our Stars, I remember just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing through Hazel's eulogy. And I didn't do that this time, but I cried pretty hard during Isaac's eulogy. And it's just the way that Gus and Isaac are still so much themselves there, even though they know Augustus is dying and they're at a pre-funeral, and it's this very strange, I'm sure surreal thing. And that really made me think of my little boy at school who has cancer. You know, I don't quite understand everything that's going on with his treatment. I know his cancer was in remission, but then it came back around Christmas time last year. But he was still able to go to school. He would miss a day here and there to go and get a treatment or a scan or whatever. But he was still able to go to school, and so I've never seen him really sick. But just through it all, he's totally himself. He was so little, he was 3 when he was diagnosed with cancer, that it's just his life to him. One day I was sitting on the swings with him, and I asked him if his brother was a good big brother. And he said, yeah. He made me a bagel once. And I was like, oh, well, that's good. That sounds like a nice big brother. And he goes, yeah, that was when I had a vacuum in my head. And he just says these things, and when he says them, you know, to me and the other teachers were like, oh my gosh. But to Reed, this is just life. It's just how he is. After Augustus dies, Hazel says something about the only person I wanted to talk to about Augustus Waters' death was Augustus Waters. And I remember identifying with that so much when I first read it. When my grandfather passed away in 2006 when I was 17, my dad came home from the hospital and told us that he was gone. And then I remember immediately calling my best friend. And when she picked up the phone, I wanted to hang up on her. I thought the first thing I wanted to do was talk to my best friend Melissa. And then I didn't want to talk to her anymore. And she's wonderful, and she understood, and you know, she was like, don't worry, I'm not offended that like you don't want to talk to me now. But I just remember feeling all out of sorts, and like the only person I wanted to talk to was my grampy. I have such a hard time with Peter Van Houten as a character because he's like a class A douchebag most of the time. But I remember the first time I read this, and again this time, although I knew, you know, his backstory this time. But I remember the first time I read The Fault in Our Stars, I felt sorry for him, like really, really sorry, before I even found out about his daughter having cancer and all of that. And I remember being like, why do I feel sorry for this guy? He's such a jerk. When Van Houten shows up in Hazel's car when she's leaving Isaac's house, and he goes, I'm trying. I just felt so bad for him, I guess, because anybody who gets to that pitiful, alcoholic, everybody in the whole world hates you state, there's nothing else to do. But Van Houten is such an interesting character. I kind of have trouble myself writing unlikable characters, and so I would really like to talk to John about, you know, his thoughts about Van Houten and how he wrote him and everything. Because he's such an interesting character. He turns out to be such a deep character. But he's such an ass! And the last thing I have to talk about is when Hazel's on the phone with Caitlin at the very end of the book, and she's talking about how she can't find the epilogue that Augustus wrote for her. And Caitlin thinks that, you know, maybe the pages weren't meant for Hazel. Maybe they were meant for somebody else, and he sent them to somebody else. And then from there, Hazel figures out that he sent the eulogy to Peter. That seems like a little bit of a deus ex machina to me. It's like Caitlin was really not involved for the whole story, and then all of a sudden she figures out that, you know, Hazel's boyfriend, who she never met, left the papers for somebody else. I don't know. That's one thing, that's like the only thing in the book to me that seems a little tiny bit far-fetched. But, you know, that's by the end of the book, you're so willing to forgive that kind of thing because it's a beautiful ending, and it's such a small thing that, you know, I really don't mind. But I didn't remember that from reading it before, and this time when I read it, I was like, that feels a little bit like a deus ex machina. Yay, Latin literary terms. I I've really enjoyed doing Nerdfighter Book Club, and I hope you guys have all enjoyed it too. And I would really like to do something about this again sometime, so we should not say that we're ending the channel here. Maybe we can do something about this, like this again. Anyways, I look forward to hearing everybody else's thoughts on the end of the book, and I'll see you guys later.